solution steering. This goes into the research and development of products that we intentionally bring out products that are going to have a substantial sustainability benefit above others. In fact, we've categorized every product that we make into these 4 buckets: challenged and transitioner products. These are things that, that something needs to change with them. We need to make them more sustainably. Performer products are things that meet the current market requirements in terms of sustainability. And then accelerator products are these things that do it substantially better than other products in their categories. And so far, just to tell you, as far as accelerator products, we've identified 13,000 of them across the portfolio of BASF products. And interestingly enough, I represent one of these 13,000 accelerator products. So I'll tell you about why it is that. Stacy will share about a tool that she's helped co-develop. This is a look at a competing product to the product that I represent. So my product competes with XPS insulation. So looking at just from a embodied carbon standpoint of XPS, depending on the density, this is the kilograms of CO2 per square foot at a certain thermal resistance. So to picture why Neopor is considered an accelerator is because, well, it delivers the same performance in the same square area, but does it with a 35 to 50 times reduced carbon footprint compared to its main competitor. So you say, well, hey, I've heard about reduced global warming, XPS. You're absolutely right. And that industry is starting to roll out across Canada and 5 US states, a lower global warming potential product. And they have brought down their global warming potential substantially, but still this accelerator product of BASF's remains 4 times lower than this best new formulation that's been introduced. And to help put into further perspective the sustainability measures BASF takes, we spend as a company $2 billion with a B in R&D of new products and new developments each year, leading to further the best-in-class performance of certain things. So something that I'll be working to help launch in North America for our company is a biomass feedstock generated insulation board that reduces the embodied carbon emissions of our product even further, another 3.5 times lower, getting closer and closer to that zero number. So just wanted to frame this a little bit from the perspective of a product manufacturer, that you might hear a lot of these comparisons and things that'll be happening in this presentation, and say, well, I don't know how this applies to me as a product manufacturer or a product rep, but for me, it's understanding what the product brings from a sustainability aspect, and then understanding how to communicate that and have another advantage in the market beyond just price and performance. These are great things to have, but you can have a sustainability advantage as well. So, as you're thinking about it with your products, several people on the call are key accounts to BASF in our upstream businesses. So Sherwin-Williams, Master Builder Solutions, DuPont, Tremco, are ones I know off the top of my head. So if you start to hear about this biomass balance concept, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to help either connect you with more of the right people or explain it more or whatever. So that's about it. Other than here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the product that I represent is manufactured all across the country. So you're not shipping air all around the country, you're making it regionally. And it's used in a lot of applications, cavity wall, EIFS and stucco, insulated concrete forms, and precast insulated wall panels has been a big one. So that's what I got. Hopefully I didn't go over too hard, but that concludes what I had to say. I'll kick it back over to Graham.
All right, thanks a lot, Justin. Good stuff. So I'd like to welcome Stacy Smedley with Building Transparency, who's going to be presenting on reducing the embodied carbon emissions of our buildings through low carbon material specification. So Stacy, I can just hand it over to you if you'd like.
Great. Good morning or afternoon or lunchtime, everybody. I'm over on the west. Thanks for having me today. I'm going to do my typical caveats that I've got a 9-year-old and a dog running around. I've been saying that for the past year now. So if you hear some noises, that's likely what it is. So I'm excited to present to you today. Justin, like you did part of my presentation for me, and it's lovely to see other folks using the EC3 tool and especially from the manufacturer side. So I appreciate seeing that. And I have a story to tell actually about your low carbon insulation product and how it was applied on a project. So just getting started though, I kind of start at the high level. I am Executive Director of Building Transparency and also Director of Sustainability at SKANSKA. And I'm going to move right now so that my dog doesn't annoy us. Sorry, just give me 1 second.
I know I've been there plenty of times over this last year. I think Ed can attest to that.
Now everybody wants to know what breed.
Yep.
Yeah, Graham is.
I sequestered myself in my son's bedroom, so hopefully now no one will be barking at us. So I am also a sustainability director at SKANSKA USA Building, and they were really where the EC3 tool was conceived of as you're looking at this from a construction perspective. So I wear both hats. And really where this all started for me and for I think a lot of people in the AEC industry, it wasn't that long ago, maybe a handful of years ago, where we started to see these kinds of slides popping up largely from Architecture 2030 and to 2050 and beyond. And then also the comparison of what was being called embodied carbon to operational carbon. So looking at, where those really fall out. And what we started to realize was that with this comparison, we've been focusing a long time on the yellow part of this pie chart or this graph chart. Really even started to think about the carbon emissions of the materials we were putting into place and really how we were putting those materials into place. So this got us to a point in the industry, I think, ago, where attention started to be paid largely from the construction sector on if we are procuring these materials and putting them into the place and they can be over half of a project footprint, our 2050 goals of zero, then what do we do about it and what do we need to learn? And I think just, having been in this space as long as most have been thinking about it, we are now approaching what I would call a tipping point when it comes to embodied carbon in the industry. We've seen this groundswell of interest and urgency. And I think it's a positive tipping point for us to be learning about it and trying to reduce it to really turn around the negative one of climate change. So that's just really my foot point now where the ball is rolling, it's not going to stop, and now we just all need to be sure that we're supporting reducing embodied carbon. And we're seeing this all over the place. Major global corporations like Amazon and Microsoft are coming out with zero carbon targets. And if you see this top size, it's a little fuzzy, but that scope 3, 12 million, where all of our construction emissions lie. And it's where most of the emissions lie for all of these global companies. That's the stuff that they build and make to sell, but they build to make all the stuff in or house all their employees. So all these companies are understanding that their supply chain is really where they have to focus if they're saying they're going to get to zero carbon. We're also seeing policies being implemented, proposed or passed. So this is just a look from the Carbon Leadership Forum's website. They've got a policy toolkit of where we're by clean type legislation being proposed. This is very supply chain specific, where it looks at material categories through the lens of global warming potential and EPDs. So these are all the states where legislation that has at least been proposed. We have the Buy Clean California legislation that's been passed that looks at kind of 4 categories of material that made it through the legislative process. And in that case, they've already actually set limits for those materials from a GWP perspective. And then this is just an example all the way down at the county level here in Washington, where commitments are putting things in around wanting to get EPDs for typically starting with structural materials and concrete, and then start to use the EC3 tool to be able to EPDs on the GWPs of their projects. And then pulling all the way back up, this is the federal level, the Clean Future Act. This is the first draft, but it's similar in the one that was put out a couple house. And what this does is set a federal BICLEAN procurement requirement that starts with disclosure via environmental product declarations, then moves to certain threshold, like 80th percentile to 60th percentile over time, where products would need to be under those thresholds, and then creating some kind of climate star or BICLEAN gold standard where the lowest 10% would get that kind of star for operational performance. So all of these things are coming at various levels. We're engaged in a lot of those conversations through building transparency based on our EPD database to help the projects or the products and the requirements that make sense based on kind of the current market. And then of course we've got this guy talking about this very openly now. We got to be on a call with him when he released the book. He's one of our funders for the EC3 tool for its role in really hopefully creating market demand for. But he's now out there being very vocal about this. Of course, his big focus is our concrete and steel right now. But there's just really an awareness that's going beyond the AEC community through things that are happening. The positive thing, I gave a presentation yesterday to a cement group, and the positive thing that I'm seeing is that a lot of the time when something like this happens and we carbon content, you think that the answer would be just don't use them, go find something else, stop using this product. But I think what you heard even from Justin is that what we're seeing is not stop using this product, it's how do we reduce it? We need to use it, let's make it lower carbon. And that's a really positive thing because that's what drives investment and innovation and actually, lower carbon products coming to market. So there's a positive spin on that we can reduce the carbon of what we build out of. So the question was really for us a few years ago when this all came to light, and opportunities were is what could we do about it? This was me at SKANSKA trying to understand as a contractor who specify or who procures and costs products, how we could really start looking at embodied carbon. And that really led to SKANSKA seed funding an idea to create a free open access tool that would be transparent and hopefully easy to use to allow industry to look at the supply chain through a carbon lens. So EC3, just to give you an idea of what the tool is really filling this gap. There are a bunch of tools that are for whole building life cycle assessment, tools like Tally or OneClick or Athena that take average emissions factors of material categories where they could have a concrete system or system or attached to do comparisons at that kind of material versus material level. And they are looking at all life cycle stages as well. And that's really good for early choices where you're comparing across materials. That's that, and your building's being built out of this bill of materials. What EC3 is doing is allow you to treat it similar to cost, where you can say, I've got this kilogram of carbon per unit of this material, and I have these from a product perspective. Here's their carbon per unit, here's their cost per unit. Let's look at both to make smart, informed choices. So it's really trying to create carbon estimate potential, just like we would look at costing of products. And really, if you do all of this, then we're getting to the point where we're doing everything we should to reduce carbon of our buildings. So EC3 started an incubation project that SKANSKA handed over to the Carbon Leadership Forum with support from Microsoft also as a pilot partner of the tool on their campus project here in Redmond, Washington. And all people on this slide, money or their methodology thoughts on how we were approaching the tool and engaged during its incubation. Once it was launched, Building Transparency was created to really continue its development. We had large interest from the tech sector in terms of people that are building a lot, but also had zero carbon commitments to become our board tool and make sure it would work for owners specifically in terms of setting requirements, enabling them to look at low carbon products. So that's our board. sponsors. So folks that are continuing to fund and engage. We are seeing more interest from the construction space. So we have Turner and Mercury on as pilot partners this year. Mercury is a European contractor, as well as architecture firms. And again, some of the large tech players continuing to fund. So our mission started as just the EC3 tool. But again, as I walk through this kind of tipping point analogy, the nonprofits now doing a whole bunch of other stuff. Most notably announced yesterday is the Open EPD standard, which is a digital open standard for the creation of environmental product declarations. UL is our formal pilot partner for that, for the first program operator to really engage and want to basically use our standard to create digital EPDs that pass into the tool without a PDF having. So it would go from a digital object to a PDF. And that's something that other program operators hopefully will adopt, really to just increase adoption and the ease of creating this digital database. We're also working on other things like underlying open data set, working with folks like EcoInvent and OpenLCA, and then getting into policy and certification support. So this is how much we started here in January of 2020, and now we're here in January of 2021, as we continue to kind of grow and scale the movement around this. And then we also have a materials can group of manufacturers that help to create education manufacturers around this, as well as an owners group that's established with around 18 different building owner developers that want to start to align their asks around embodied carbon. So getting into the tool itself, really what the tool is doing is creating a digital EPD database. These are all third-party verified EPDs. Allows you to do what Justin showed in his opening, which is look at different materials within a category at the product level to see what the current landscape is and make selections. And then that actually can be used to multiply against material quantities at a project level to create kind of a project snapshot of where the impacts are and where the supply chain reductions exist. And then usually savings at the end of a project by selecting your EPDs to know what you did. And I've been talking a lot about EPDs. I should probably put this earlier in the presentation, but for those who don't know, this analogy of the EPD as an environmental nutrition label for a product where you've got a kilogram of CO2, which is kind of like a carbohydrate, and then a declared unit, which for concrete EPD is cubic meters or cubic yards. Obviously, that's not kind of like a serving size for something that you would eat. So this is the information that we are pulling out of what currently is a landscape of people, digitizing it into the database, pulling out that data for folks to be able to use. On the material quantity side, just in terms of how an architecture or engineering firm might building level, there are ways for contractors to actually provide just the bill of materials through construction estimates to get to the quantities to put into the tool. There's also an integration with BIM 360 and as well as the ability to take the tally model and be able to push that out if you're doing a whole building LCA and tally and export your bill of materials to EC3. So again, doing that first supply chain procurement when you're at the right level of design. So all of those things are possible right now. There's that slide again, just a reminder. Hopefully this helps put that into perspective, but there's just more slides to help with this. This is a slide for EC3. So we launched in November of 2019. We're currently, I think, eclipsing 12,000 users of the tool. This seems to just grow continuously. So it's the curve I don't want to flat COVID time. And then there's the kind of breakdown of who is using the tool right now. So you can see it is architects, contractors are kind of our next big swath alongside sustainability consultants, and then manufacturers, owners, et cetera. We really wanted this to be kind of cross sector, so it's good for us to see it trending that way. Just to talk about the tool a little bit, this is looking at the tool itself and what you see when you log in. I'm going to do a live demo, but it is, again, a database of EPDs per material category. I'll walk you through this when we get into the tool itself, but really this is kind of the tool is supposed to do, is really help people get into the materials and do these searches. And just again, I'm going to run through these really quickly, but these are just graphs showing the number of EPDs in the tool over time for the first year and how that at a rapid pace across all these different categories of products. Let's just run through those quickly. And then finally, just where the searches are kind of falling. This is interesting for us just to see. And if you have a manufacturer presence in the tool, this is something that a manufacturer could get without seeing who number of searches per product across the tool's use for the first year. All right, now I will go to a live demo. If you have questions, answer them live if I get into this, but also we can put them in the chat, whatever makes the most sense. So now I'm on the homepage of the tool or Building Transparency. This is the tool. I'm going to go ahead and just sign in. Again, it's free to register and sign in, so anyone can go do that and do what I'm doing in 5 minutes. Sharon, you're going to see your own profile up here. You see I'm set as my admin user for Building Transparency. If you click into your profile, you'll be able to do things like manage all this stuff, profile stuff in a tool. But if you put in your employer and your profession, you'll become a professional user, which gives you a few more different things that you can do, like sharing and email addresses and things. That's based on CPDRs. If you use a Gmail address, you're going to be a private user. If you fill in those 2 fields, you'll get the professional status. So I always just mention that for people that want to go in. You can set defaults for things. And here what you'll see is for your company. It will start to show you who else is actually registered from your company. And then you can go in at the top. If you want to go into your organization, you can click on that button. And there's Building Transparency's presence in the tool. For a manufacturer, you can select that you're a manufacturer. And what that would do is, again, allow you to see every company that's got a login. There's a manager for each company where you can set your access to manage, read, write, or write for every employee. And then for manufacturers specifically, what's nice is there's a place where you would see your plants show as they appear in our searches. And you also see the full list of EPDs that you have in the tool and be able to open and view them right from the organization page, as well as get your digital EPD, which is telling you how many people have actually opened up your EPDs in the past month. So that's just kind of the user side of things, how we're trying to set that up to be hopefully helpful to users. On the homepage, it always starts with this landing page where you're seeing the number of EPDs we have. So this is looking at non-concrete EPDs and where we're getting the data from. We are now globally pulling in EPDs, so we're getting them pulled. For concretes, we're very heavy in the States because we have a digital integration already for concrete EPDs here. If you start to scroll through, you can start to look at this from kind of manufacturers with plants all the way to how many EPDs we have in the tool for all the categories. And then how that breaks down to actual manufacturers and plants. So this is constantly updated, so you'll see real time what we're doing. If I go into the find and compare materials, just like Justin had done to get to his diagrams, what you're going to see on the left and in this tree is all the categories. You're seeing everything that I see, so all the pilot categories that aren't currently public. We are going through an effort now to actually push out a lot of these pilot categories to beta. So things that you're seeing with pilot by them are likely to go public in the near term. So that gets into things like other finishes, etc., that have a lot of that we haven't had time to really rinse filters yet. We want to start giving people access to all of these things. I'm going to go into a non-concrete category just for fun. I typically start with concrete. But I'll do carpet because that's one that's public. You'll see I'm doing this in both places where I can navigate to the level of detail we have. I'm going to stay on carpet and click next. If I was carpet products, I could search and sort by different performance requirements that I knew I needed to meet. And then I can click search. I actually might even put in US, or just looking at US carpet type. So I'm putting those filters in and I'm clicking search. That's going to pop up the data for me. So the first thing I'm going to do is just scroll down a little bit. These search tips will always remind you what you searched by. You'll get the statistics of how many products, product EPDs were returned for your search. And then if you scroll down, this is a list. Every row is an actual digital EPD object that gives you the manufacturer, the plant, the description, other information that's important like pile weight for carpet, yard material, and then kilogram of CO2 per declared unit. So this is EC3, which is kilograms of CO2 per square feet. And that diagram that Justin pulled up is just clicking this compare button above manufacturers. So if you're just trying to get a sense of the current kind of landscape of manufacturer data and where they fall, So it's going to tell you how many has and where their range of impacts are right now for their products. You need six products to become a box plot to have your own range and get that little green bar. So you, Hackcraft and Milliken have 3 each. And then for the box plots, what they're showing you is really for interfaces 160 EPDs. There's one as low as 0.196 product. That's a really low one. They've got one as high as this. This is the 20th to the 80th percentile. So this is really directionally where most of the data is coming in from a carbon plots. If you roll back up again, even in this little box plot up here, that's showing you the results of your search. Architects and owners are using this to set more achievable benchmarks or targets. So at the 80th percentile of the search, if you just go and procure a carpet tile, you're likely not to be any worse than this. You could likely be as good as this doing low carbon procurement just based on what the current data tells us. You can also do things like open up details for each EPD, where we've pulled out more information, and then even open the EPD, get the digital version of that document, where we've pulled the information into a format where you're going to see, my internet's saying it's unstable, so I'm still, you're going to see the product name, again, things that are important like the expiration date, a QR code that someone could put on a product to be able to scan and get to this document, a description of the product, parameters that we've been able to pull out of the EPD, other things we wish we could pull out of the EPD, and then over here, how specific the data is. So I clicked on this one. What you're going to see is it's telling you it's manufacturer and product specific, but it's according to the EPD. If I actually clicks that box, what you're going to see happen is this uncertainty should reduce. I'm sorry if it's not right now. I think the tool. There you go. You can see that kind of uncertainty reduce based on that box being checked. This is really important for products that have large supply chain impacts. That last bit of uncertainty is tied to if you've got supply chain specific data. EPD. For carpet, it might be a number for the PVC backing. If you use your supply chain number coming from the source, it would be more accurate and potentially lower. So this is just getting into how we're displaying the data for users, so how specific or how transparent it is. And per ISO standards, we are supposed to look at uncertainty to ensure that people aren't just taking that declared number as something they can compare next to another object. So going back to the searches, the other thing you can do, even at the product level, these are all going to be interface, of course, but if I filtered for a number of products or meeting my criteria, I can compare at the product level, which is what Justin had done. Of course, these are all interfaces, so they're just comparing interface, but that's how you get to that product level comparison. Other things that the tool does, of course, for architects and engineers is the building level. So if I go into a very simple building that I've done, this is the one that my son built as a project. So if he can do it, anyone can. So it's our dog's lair. He's put it as a other use, set a construction start date, put a location, put in building classification, level of development, all these things that we'd want to know if we were going to start doing benchmarking, where the data came from. And then down here, the description, the quantity of that material, and then he's done those searches directly from here, where he's opened up the search. He said, I know it's 5,000 PSI concrete to be 100 miles from my site. He's done that search. And then what I had him do is actually select a product. So he had the collection of what was possible, but he also had a select do by just quite frankly, picking the one that you use. So if you knew that this was the mix that you used for that concrete, you could select it and save that. It gives you both the collections that you use plus the selected materials that you used. And then look at some summary charts of this information, things like a Sankey diagram that show you the relative impacts of the concrete versus the steel versus the quantity times emissions. And it shows you that range of reduction based on your search parameters in that particular category based on the EPDs that have returned that meet your 80th to 20th percentile. That rolls it up all the way from building components like superstructure, finishes, and enclosure to shell interiors and substructure up to the building, where if it's at a targetable, they could use that white bar as their kind of first low-hanging fruit. There's also charts for lead, where there's a pilot credit, where if you go all the way through and you select your realized product baseline, you can actually get up to 2 credits, innovation points right now. And this is the chart that meets the requirements for lead reporting. There's also so you can download that give you this information in a pretty kind of summary report that's formatted, that pulls out all of the information you might want. All the things that you put in this document. If I start on the left, you're going to see again all the requirements about the building. Again, the descriptions, the quantities. If you go over to the left, the part also for users is this information about what the selected material was and a link back to that digital EPD. So again, that means lead reporting. We're seeing a lot of users just for benchmarking and other things. The last thing I just show on the tool is there is this ability to import EPDs. So anyone that has an EPD that we in this current kind of framework where we have to upload a PDF, run a script to read it, and put it into a digital format. Anyone can do that and then see what their EPDs are in the digitization process. So when we last updated it, if it was parsed successfully or with errors, etc. So that's really, if you have EPDs you want to get in the tool, you can do that yourself. For managed data, this is just going to give you under product EPDs that kind of raw search list of all EPDs. If you don't want to go through a category search, you're just interested in things like maybe, you know, ASTM have. You can do things just like get to all of ASTM's EPD or select a category and just search for a category this way. So this is just a different way to be able to search and filter the database. And I think with that, I'll go back to my presentation. I just kind of start down here. These are all my screenshots that I get lost. I can't do it on the web for any reason. But really what we're seeing now is kind of 4 steps that people are taking. A team. The first step is if a manufacturer or product doesn't have an EPD, ask for one. So this is where it's just a simple ask to the manufacturer. We've got some transparency website where the team or the owner will say, hey, we're wanting to track this. This is the proxy we're going to use to track this. Will you please get this EPD? It's similar to what we've seen in other sustainability where is how the ball starts to get rolling when it comes to, you know, VOC content or all those things that we've looked at in the past. So that really is still the first step, is just to ask. The second is if you have EPDs specify carpet and there's 3 manufacturers that meet your performance or aesthetic requirements, you can ask or require them to provide an EPD in your spec, and you could potentially the lowest one is your basis of design. Then the next step is getting that into the bid documents. So this is some typical bid language we're seeing contractors now use that we've templated on our site. If you have an EPD, provide one. If you don't, will you get one before construction starts? If not, why not? And if so, would you charge the project? So again, those are all open-ended questions, but it helps if the suppliers are willing or able to do. How this worked for concrete and some projects is we were able to set performance specs at time of bid, require EPD in the market, and then actually analyze the suppliers both on carbon and cost. And the lowest carbon supplier was the lowest cost supplier for concrete because they're able to optimize, compete on both. The last thing to do is track your realized savings in EC3 and be able to get to that benchmark of kilograms of CO2 per square foot. So again, what we're seeing in those slides, but also just from policy, both on the private and public side, are the requirement for EPDs, the utilization of a database EPDs, the eventual setting of targets or limits for those materials by category, and the requirement to submit at the end of the day to show that you've actually realized savings and quantify it. I'll put it on this slide, but the last story I'm going to share is one that's particular to BASF's product. We're on a recent project. We were able to look at next to other products that are meeting performance specifications and present to an owner. Here's the carbon reduction and the potential cost. And they made the choice to go with the lower carbon product. That happen in the marketplace as products come online that can really help clients and owners meet those reduction targets. And with that, I will stop.
All right, thank you, Stacy. That was very interesting. It's nice to have one-stop shop that you can go to find these EPDs. I know a couple years ago I was working on a lead for a commercial interiors project, and we were spending a lot of time trying to track down EPDs from different manufacturers and for the different construction components. So this is nice to have a one place that we can easily find that information.
Yes, and it's continually growing over time. I think the vision to kind of push those out to the public side is something that we're excited about, so that more of those EPDs can actually be seen by public users.
I guess with that, we can open it up for questions. If anybody has a question on for Stacy on the presentation.
Yeah, if I could go first, I guess. I'm curious about the digital EPD pilot with UL, and if the intention is to also keep track of other environmental impacts beyond the global warming potential. So going through that process to digitize them in the first place, will UL also make it easy to compare freshwater use or energy use per functional unit or something like that as well?
Yeah, so the next generation of what you see in EC3 from a digital EPD perspective will have all the other impacts. So the version that we're piloting with UL is not particular to GWP, and based, that it'll just be part of that open standard where we're capturing all the environmental impacts as well as whatever stages are included in the EPDs that we're grabbing. So it's a kind of a next gen version of what we started with. And then, the exciting thing is that if all this is starting digitally, it's not just EC3 that can house this information. The information will be in EC3, but if anyone else, wants to create a digital database to sort just the water side or to do things that we're not doing on our user interface, the data will be available to them in that format. Any other questions?
So you did show a specifications section, partial things that were important to the presentation. Well, how do you write a specification with this in mind? Is it all about performance specifying rather than proprietary specifying for product?
It depends on the material category, I think. So we're seeing that particularly useful, obviously in concrete, where you want to set performance specs that the concrete supplier can then go and actually, change his recipe to a lower carbon option that meets your requirements. We've seen in things like finishes where, architects, interior designers know that they love these 3 carpet tiles. And so they will just go search for that particular product. And the one that is the lowest carbon might become the basis of design in the spec. And the language would be something like must have an environmental product declaration. We've seen some start to set, that cannot be above this kilogram of CO2 per cubic yard. If they've gone into the tool and they can say that that's, it comes down to having 3 options a lot of the time in some of those other categories. So we're seeing both. I guess it depends on the specifier, but also the material category and what makes sense.
So I see Charlie sitting here with roofing. Do you have EPDs for your different types of roof, Charlie?
So a lot of this is new to me, other than just my own awareness of, the need for us as humans to get our act together. I was going to ask that question: do we see this finding its way into the market via, like we saw LEED projects, or we saw, energy code driving higher R value to save energy? I'm wondering when we start seeing this at a high level of demand where all of us as product suppliers have to provide this data. I'm honestly, this is brand new to me, so I'm so glad I jumped on. We were just acquired by Lafarge, the concrete people from Europe, and I know that they're spending a lot of energy on this, but I think that closing takes place in a month or two. So I'm guessing that we're going to probably get a lot of directives from the parent company for us to do more along the lines of sustainability with roofing products.
Charlie, what is your roofing
It's
company?
Firestone Building Products is the manufacturer. And so they're in EPDM, TPO, polyiso. I was going to see if you clicked on insulation, if the polyiso manufacturers popped up or not.
So we have 2 EPDs from you, one for TPO single ply roofing
Okay.
and one for EPDM sheet.
Okay.
And that is a category. We've got the CFFA, chemical films, and is one of our pilot partners. So we are building out the membrane roofing category as we speak. So if we go to this one,
Yeah.
you'll see that we've done a pretty good job with.
Can you go on insulation right there on that tree?
Sure.
Let's see what's out there.
What kind of insulation?
I was thinking polyiso, so it's probably going to be board stock. Yeah, it would be board stock.
Would that be Firestone also?
It would be, yeah. So it looks like we've got some competitors in the game, but maybe we're not there yet. Owens Corning, GAF. Oh, there we go, Kingspan. Yeah, we sort of, as a manufacturer, react to the demand for it. So I think if we're getting a lot of noise in the market that we need these EPDs, then I'm going to guess our science guys are going to start, responding to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I go back, I have that slide up here, even just for insulation. If you look at the searches in the tool, so it was concrete and steel, and insulation was the 3rd highest the first year, with almost 20,000 people doing a search of that category.
Those actually could have been mostly me as well. I don't know.
Yeah, did you do it 20,000 times, Justin? Yeah, that's a good point. There's the nerdy ones of us that go in and search it every day, right? But we are. I think it's coming, Charlie, and I think it's, I'm deep into this, so I've got my own I'm in my little bubble where I'm dealing with this every day. But we're just getting more and more requests from architects, but also, the owners. The owners are the ones that want to start to set standard requirements and really align across them. It's really interesting. They don't want to compete. They want to be asking the supply chain the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to start to see some common asks coming out for this information to be able to be competitive on projects where there's large quantities of this stuff.
So I see Don with Sherwin-Williams paint. Do they fit into this?
They do, and I know that they have EPDs and they're in here.
Oh, that's good to know we're in there. Yes, I saw paint was a pilot category when you expand it. Yes, we have several EPDs readily available, both in multiple locations. But I do have a question since I'm already kind of chatting away, Stacy.
Sure.
So category right there, plant or plant group. So how is it handled? So Sherwin-Williams has the same product manufactured in multiple plants throughout the US.
Yep.
So how is that, I see it says unspecified plant. So how does
Yes.
that impact the calculations?
Show you, and I will tell you how you can help us fix the unspecified plant problem. So here's the EPD, and we're saying it's not plant specific right now if it's for multiple plants. Again, if I click that, the uncertainty just goes down a little bit because we're getting plant specific data. But so if you go down here, you'll see that right now it's unspecified and global. So we need some help understanding what plants make this product. If I go to Sherwin-Williams profile in the tool, I'm not going to scroll down too far so I don't show everyone's email addresses, but you can see April Morris is currently the manager of Sherwin-Williams. She was probably the first person that signed on as a Sherwin-Williams employee, but you could go back and change the admin. If I scroll down quickly, here are all of your EPDs on the, on the Sherwin-Williams organization page. And then here under this plant, you as a manufacturer can create a plant or a several plant group, name the group, blah paint products, right? So it's where all of that kind of product is produced, and set all of this and actually build up your plants in the tool and then tag those to the EPDs. So there's a process where you can tell us how to do that, or you can actually go in and manage that yourself and make sure that it's appropriately done.
And so to clarify, like I'll just use one product, like our ProMar 200 is made for different plants. So so I guess that's what I'm not fully understanding. So we wouldn't know, since the EPD translates to that product as a whole, no matter where it's made.
Yep.
Do we need to collect batch dates on a project that
No. I mean, at this point, what it will do, if you set up a plant group in the tool, you'll see here I just said blah paint. This could be ProMar plants as a group. You can say those plants are all in the US, and then you could actually create the plants.
So
and
for that product, we would tell you the 4 plants and make the group that you've described. Okay, I get it.
And then when people are searching, it'll show them that it's made in those 4 plants. And then if they are doing a radius search, it would pick up that, the closest plant. So it does all the geocoding once we know where those plants are and their tagged products.
Thank you.
Yeah. Happy to help. If you want to get on a call, Dawn, I'd be happy to. We do this all the time with manufacturers now. We can just walk you through how to set this up appropriately and get you going. Or we can do it ourselves too if you just give us an Excel list of this product is this plant at this location. Either way.
Yeah, I'll talk to our team. I think there might be someone who's probably better suited to help across all of our groups than myself, but I can probably make some of those introductions on my end and see who's the right person. So we can circle back offline.
Sure. Yeah, I think paint's coming to the public beta categories though. So this is the kind of thing that we hope we can try to kind of tackle before we launch it to the public.
Are there a group of approved third-party folks, or is it it well right now?
There's the program operators are the ones that have to verify the document. What I'll show you, this is really actually cool. So for you, if you were in the tool and you came over here to manage data, you can do a few different things. I think the easiest way to do this, here we go, how to get an EPD, product EPDs. If you select your category, we'll just start with insulation. If I select insulation and click next, it's going to tell you all the program operators that create insulation EPDs and how many they have. So if you're looking for someone to reach out to, UL has made 178 insulation EPDs. So this will give you a list of the folks that are in your category that are creating these documents. So that's kind of the starting point. I know who at UL I would connect you to. So I'm more than happy to also just connect you directly via an email. But this is where you can actually just go in and start to understand, who are the people that are verifying these documents? How many have they done?
Very good. Okay, thank you.
So while we're picking on people, Adam, with weather barriers, what I saw weather barriers was on your list.
It sure is. Yeah, I think Tyvek came out probably 2 years ago. They came out with an EPD, and then the DuPont Styrofoam has one for the blue board, but they don't have an updated one yet for the reduced global warming.
Yes, you'll see in here that Tyvek and then someone from Europe looks like the only 2 that we currently have. I think that Europe one might be it's a roof slate that we need to get out of there. But yeah, DuPont Tyvek is the only weather barrier that we currently have data for in commercial wrap. So again, I think one of the things if we start pushing these public, what we've seen in the spaces for the public categories is that it is spurring competition, and folks are kind of, now that they know that the tool allows people to search for this stuff, adoption's happening in some of the public categories. So again, moving some more of these to public, I think will help spur that too.
Thinking about developing EPDs, you had mentioned some of that, the buy clean proposals. I thought that there was some language in there that talks about having plant specific EPDs. Is that the case that the requirement for EPDs, rather than averaging it out among all of your plants? So with Sherwin-Williams, say a particular product is made in 4 different plants, but the I don't know, the energy is all renewable energy in one plant and it's all coal in another plant. Those would have 2 very different environmental impacts. I guess the question is, are things driving toward that plant specific EPD direction?
They are. Yeah, I think it's what we're trying to help with is dependent on the material category and the process for making that material. That plant energy factor can be ginormous, or it could be not very important. And so what we're doing is really working with each material category to get to the underlying LCA to be able to show in our tool, but also to policymakers where it makes sense or where it doesn't to go to that level of specificity. I don't think it's a one size fits all for every material category. So we're trying to help inform them as they're going through that process. For concrete, we definitely need to know all the way back to the cement plant. Where that level of specificity, but for some other things, it might not be as big of a deal because that energy, the energy part might not be that much of the emissions impact, if that makes sense. It is driving that direction right now. We're trying to help policymakers be responsible in how they really draft that language. And I think it's going to have to be material category by material category if they have the data to support it.
Maybe this question is internal to our group, but within CSI or AIA, are there initiatives for goals in these using the tool or the EPDs? I remember when AIA had the goal of increasing the R value and energy code for insulation by 50% greater than what the energy code called for. Just wondering, talking out loud in our group, are there initiatives along this line?
Nothing that I know of.
I know that the AIA it has put out their materials pledge and then their climate commitments, and that it includes embodied carbon as an item that has to be looked at from an AIA perspective. I'm actually doing another CSI presentation to your counterparts in the Pacific Northwest today in about 2 hours because they asked me to also. So perhaps there could be something coming out of the CSI that could start to look at this. I don't know of anything from that perspective yet, but I know the architecture side, they're starting to try to figure out what those requirements are, and even have carbon reporting that they do for the 2030 challenge include embodied carbon as part of their DDX work. Sorry, there's my pug snorting. That's not me, I promise.
All right. Anybody else?
No.
We're getting right on time here. So Stacy, thank you. Enjoyed the presentation. Very informative, and I appreciate you taking time out to talk to everyone. Hopefully it's hopefully everybody gets into and uses this tool, at least to check it out. I know I'm going to start getting in there and poking around.
And I just would say that, my job is to support largely the manufacturer side to make sure that we're doing this responsibly, and we have, what we're doing, and you're ahead of the questions that might come. So these are the kinds of presentations I love to do, and my email address is open, and please reach out. Need any help?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good one, everyone.